The castle was quiet, but not peaceful. Moonlight spilled through narrow windows, slicing the darkness into thin silver lines. Every corridor smelled of cold stone and old secrets. In the deepest tower, Alara pressed her hand against the wall, listening, her heart hammered like a drum. Tonight was the night she would leave. Her stepmother's words had echoed in her mind all evening, cruel and sharp. "Tomorrow, we'll sell that Omega girl." Alara had repeated them silently, tasting the bitterness. She was not a thing to be sold. She had magic in her veins, though she had been taught to hide it. That magic made her special, and that made her dangerous in the eyes of her stepmother. Alara's small fingers traced the cold stone, searching for the hidden latch she had discovered weeks ago. A faint groove in the wall, almost invisible, led to a secret passage. She took a slow, careful breath. The wind outside rattled the castle shutters, carrying whispers she could almost understand. It was as if the castle itself knew her plan and trembled with anticipation. Footsteps echoed above her, light but steady. The castle was never empty at night. Servants and guards moved like shadows, and one misstep could end her escape before it began. Alara pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The sound passed, and she waited a long moment before moving forward. Her hand found the groove. She pressed. A section of the wall shifted with a quiet click. A narrow staircase revealed itself, spiraling downward into darkness. The air smelled damp and earthy. It was not a pleasant smell, but it smelled like freedom. Alara swallowed her fear. She had never gone this far alone, but she had no choice. The staircase ended in a small, hidden chamber. A single lantern hung from the ceiling, swinging gently as if moved by unseen hands. Alara's eyes adjusted to the dim light. The chamber contained old supplies, broken furniture, and dust thick enough to choke on. But more importantly, there was a small wooden door leading outside, a door that opened to the cliffs beyond the castle walls. If she could reach it, she could disappear into the night. Before she could step forward, a cold breeze made her shiver. The castle seemed to hold its breath. A shadow shifted in the corner of the chamber. Alara froze. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. The shadow moved closer, revealing a tall figure cloaked in black. His face was hidden, but his presence was commanding. Alara felt her chest tighten. She had no sword, no weapon, only her wits and her magic, and she was not ready to reveal that yet. "I could ask you the same," the figure said, his voice smooth and low. It carried a strange authority, a hidden danger. Alara took a step back, her mind racing. I'm leaving," she stammered. "I have to go." The figure tilted his head, watching her like a predator studying prey. "You have courage," he said, "or foolishness. I cannot tell which." Alara clenched her fists. "I'm not afraid of you. I must survive. I must survive." A faint chuckle came from him. "Survival has many faces," he murmured. He stepped closer, and Alara could feel the weight of his presence. It was as if the darkness itself had taken shape in front of her, and yet there was something else, a spark that made her heart skip. Fear, yes, but curiosity too. "I do not wish to hurt you," he said finally. "But you are far from safe here, and you cannot go alone." Alara's eyes narrowed. "Why should I trust you?" He paused, as if considering her question. "Because," he said slowly, "we have the same enemy, her stepmother." The words were unspoken, but they hung in the air between them. Alara's throat went dry. Could she trust a stranger? Could she even trust herself? She had always been alone, but the thought of leaving the castle without help filled her with dread. Finally, she nodded. "Lead the way," she whispered. He inclined his head. "Stay close. Do not speak unless I ask." They moved through the hidden passage, descending deeper into the earth beneath the castle. The air grew colder and heavier, and the walls seemed to close in. Every sound, every drip of water, every distant footstep made her jump, but she followed, step by careful step. As they walked, the stranger spoke softly. What they do not understand, they fear. That is why they hunt omegas. That is why they would sell you. Alara's voice was barely audible. And you are not afraid? He paused, and she could see the faint outline of his jaw tightening. Fear does not guide me. Power guides me. They emerged into a narrow tunnel that led outside, where the cliffs rose sharply above the dark waters below. The moon hung low, casting a silver path across the waves. Alara's heart leapt. Freedom was close, so close she could almost touch it, but then a whistle pierced the night. Sharp, clear, and filled with malice. Footsteps followed, pounding the stone corridors above them. Alara froze. They know you are leaving, the stranger said. Run. Alara did not need to be told twice. She sprinted forward, the wind whipping her hair across her face. The stranger followed close behind. The tunnel opened to a ledge overlooking the cliff's edge. Below, jagged rocks and the dark sea waited. She swallowed hard, her legs trembling. You can't jump, she gasped. You must, he said simply. And I will not leave you behind. Alara clenched her jaw and leaped, catching a ledge partway down. The wind tore at her cloak, nearly ripping it free. She held on with all her strength. The stranger landed beside her, his hands steady and sure. Together, they slid down the cliff face to the rocks below. Once they were safely on the shore, Alara sank to her knees, gasping for breath. Her hands were scraped, her dress torn, but she was alive. The castle loomed above them, dark and silent, like a predator waiting for the next meal. Why did you help me? She asked, her voice shaking. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Because, he said softly, I cannot allow her cruelty to succeed. And because you are not meant to be a prisoner. Alara looked up at him. For a brief moment, she saw something beyond the shadow, beyond the danger, something human, and perhaps kind. Her heart ached with both fear and a strange, unspoken longing. They did not speak again as they made their way through the dark forest beyond the cliffs. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow, felt like the castle reaching for them. Alara could not shake the feeling that the night itself was alive, guiding or warning them. Finally, they stopped at a small clearing, where the moonlight poured like silver rain. Alara sank against a tree, exhausted but alive. She had escaped, but her freedom was only the beginning. Ahead lay dangers she could not yet imagine. The stranger stood a few paces away, silent and watchful. Alara realized she knew nothing of him, his name, his purpose, or the secrets he carried, and yet, for reasons she did not understand, she trusted him. As the wind whispered through the trees, Alara clenched her fists. She had survived the castle. She had escaped the claws of her stepmother. And she would not be sold. Not tonight. Not ever. But the night was not over. And in the distance, a faint glow of torches moved through the forest. They were being followed. Alara's heart sank, but she straightened her back, gripping the tree with one hand and reaching for her hidden power with the other. She was no longer a girl to be sold. She was an Omega, and she would fight for her life. The stranger's voice broke the silence, low and tense. They are coming, and they will not stop until they have what they want. Alara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the world pressing down. Her freedom had been won, but the fight was far from over. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of something unfamiliar stirred, a spark that could burn either as a weapon or a flame of trust. She looked at the stranger, meeting his shadowed gaze, and for the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had found not only an ally, but someone who could stand beside her. Even in the darkness, the forest whispered around them. The castle watched from above, and in that moment, Alara knew that her escape was only the beginning of a story much larger than herself. And far above, a single raven cried, as if marking the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The forest seemed alive in the moonlight. Every leaf, every twisted branch, moved as if it whispered secrets meant only for the night. Alara's breathing was heavy, her heart still pounding from the climb down the cliff. Behind her, the stranger walked silently, his steps as sure and quiet as a shadow. "Who are you?" she asked finally, breaking the silence. Her voice trembled, part fear and part curiosity. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he watched the path ahead, alert to every rustle and flicker of movement. The forest was alive with danger, and he moved as if he could sense every threat. After a moment, he spoke, low and calm. "I am Kale," he said. "And you are far from safe, Alara." Alara swallowed hard at the sound of her name. No one had ever used it like that. With both respect and caution. She nodded, forcing herself to keep moving. "We should find shelter," she said. "The guards or hunters, they won't give up." Kale's eyes narrowed. "You are correct. They will follow, and they will not show mercy." He paused, glancing at her. "But you have strength. Not just magic, but courage." Alara felt a flicker of pride, but it was quickly swallowed by fear. Courage had not saved her yet. It had only led her to the edge of the cliff. She stayed silent, focusing on each step, each shadow, each sound of the forest around them. After walking in tense silence for what felt like hours, they reached a small, ruined shrine hidden in the trees. Its walls were cracked, overgrown with ivy, and the roof had mostly collapsed. Yet, it was safe enough to rest. For now. Alara sank to the ground, her hands shaking. Kale knelt beside her, reaching into a satchel and pulling out a small, worn cloth. He handed it to her without a word. She used it to wipe the blood from her palms and arms, thankful for the brief care. "You must eat," Kale said after a moment. From his bag, he produced small rations, bread, and dried fruit. Alara hesitated. Trust was difficult, but hunger was stronger. She took the food, biting into it quickly, the taste both bitter and sweet in the quiet night. Kale watched her carefully, but did not intrude. He seemed to carry a weight, a tension in his shoulders, as if something from his past would not let him rest even in a hidden forest. Alara's eyes lingered on him. Curious, despite herself, she wanted to know his story, but something in his silence warned her that questions could be dangerous. Finally, she asked, "Why are you helping me? You could leave me to the castle." Kale's expression hardened, and for a moment, he looked distant, almost haunted. "Because," he said slowly, "I owe a debt. And because I know what it is to be hunted, to be trapped by those who see only what they can gain from you." Alara's heart clenched. She understood that feeling better than anyone. She looked down at her hands, imagining the chains that had held her for so long. The cold eyes of her stepmother. The whispers of selling her as though she were nothing. "I don't want to be trapped ever again," she whispered. "You won't be," Kale said. His voice was firm but quiet, and there was a strange warmth in it. Like a flame in the cold night, the forest around them shivered, and suddenly, movement caught their attention. Shadows slipped between the trees, moving faster than any human should. Alara stiffened. The hunters were close. She could feel it. Kale rose silently, placing himself between Alara and the shadows. His hands moved subtly, shaping the air around them with faint, glimmering magic. A low hum vibrated through the clearing, enough to make the forest seem uneasy, as if nature itself respected the power between them. "Stay behind me," Kale said. "They will try to take you. Do not let them." Alara nodded, fear rising again, but she also felt something new, a strange confidence in being beside him. She had never trusted anyone so quickly, yet the pull of his presence was undeniable. Something about him made the danger seem bearable. The hunters emerged from the trees, masked, armored, and relentless. They did not hesitate. Kale moved first, his hands glowing with energy. A wave of force struck the ground before them, throwing the hunters back. Alara gasped. She had never seen such power. "Run," Kale ordered, and she followed instinctively, leaping over roots and stones as he guided her through hidden paths in the forest. Hours passed, and the chase slowed as the hunters lost their trail. At last, they stopped near a small river, its water reflecting the pale moonlight. Elara bent over, catching her breath. Kale knelt beside her again, scanning the forest for any signs of pursuit. "You are fast," he said quietly, almost a compliment. Elara's cheeks flushed. "But you cannot always rely on speed alone. You must learn to trust your magic. And yourself." Elara looked at him. "My magic? I've never been allowed to use it fully. What if I make a mistake?" Kale's eyes softened. "Mistakes are part of learning. Power is not only in magic, but in knowing when to act and when to wait. You have both in you. I can help, if you let me." For the first time, Elara felt the stirrings of hope. Perhaps she was not as alone as she thought. Perhaps someone could help her not only survive, but also grow strong enough to face her stepmother and the cruel world she had escaped. They set up a small fire in the clearing, careful to keep it low and hidden. The flames danced and flickered, casting shadows that seemed to move like living things. Elara stared into the fire, thinking of her life before the castle, the small village she had been taken from. Her mother's gentle voice, the warmth of sunlight on her skin. Memories, both painful and comforting, filled her heart. Kale watched her quietly, and she could feel his gaze, steady and unyielding. The air between them seemed charged, not just with danger but with something she could not name. A bond forming in silence, built on trust, fear, and an unspoken understanding that their fates were linked. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the fragile calm, a soft rustle from the far side of the clearing. Elara stiffened. Kale rose immediately, moving toward the sound with silent precision. His hand gestured for her to stay behind. She obeyed, heart pounding. As he vanished into the shadows, minutes passed like hours. Then he returned, his expression unreadable. "They are not far," he said, "and they are relentless. If we do not move, they will surround us by dawn." Elara felt a chill run down her spine. Her freedom, so recently won, was again under threat. But this time, she did not feel helpless. She had Kale, and for the first time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she could fight not just to survive, but to shape her own destiny. Kyle held out a hand to her. "We leave at first light. There is a place you can hide. A place where your magic will be safe." Elara hesitated, then took his hand. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her. In that moment, the forest felt less threatening, the night less oppressive. They were allies, bound by necessity and circumstance, but perhaps something more. As they settled in to wait for the first hint of dawn, Elara's mind drifted to her stepmother. The thought of the cruel castle and the whispers of selling her filled her with anger, but it also fueled a quiet determination. She would not be a victim, she would not be prey. And as the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the distant sounds of the hunter's pursuit, Elara realized that the night had changed her. She was no longer the frightened girl trapped in a tower. She was alive, and her story was only beginning. But the forest was not the only danger. Somewhere beyond the trees, a shadow watched, and Kale, despite his power, did not yet know the full extent of what they would face. Elara leaned back against the tree, her eyes closing briefly. The fire flickered, the wind whispered, and for a moment, the world felt still. But she knew it would not last. Not while her stepmother, her past, and the hunters pursued her. Not while the magic inside her stirred, calling her toward a destiny she had only begun to understand. And in that stillness, a single thought echoed in her mind. "I am no longer theirs. I am my own." The night waited around them, full of shadow, full of danger, full of promise. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of trust, perhaps even something like hope, glowed between them. The first light of dawn spilled through the forest, painting the trees in pale gold. Elara rose slowly, feeling the stiffness in her limbs. The forest had been a temporary refuge, but safety was fleeting. Every rustle of leaves, Every distant bird call reminded her that the hunters and her stepmother were still out there. She could not rest for long. Kale stood a few paces away, scanning the horizon. His presence was steady, protective, and somehow familiar now. The night had changed something between them. A quiet bond had formed, one that did not need words, built on trust, shared danger, and the recognition that they were now linked by more than circumstance. "We should move," Kale said finally. "There is a place where your magic will be safe, a hidden sanctuary. But it is not easy to reach. The path is dangerous, and the hunters are relentless." Alara nodded. She no longer feared him, nor did she fear the unknown. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered by determination. "I will go," she said firmly. "I am ready." Kale studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then we leave. But you must listen carefully. One wrong move could lead them to us, and then—" His voice trailed off, leaving the threat unspoken but understood. They moved through the forest, their footsteps quiet on the soft earth. The path was narrow, overgrown, and treacherous, winding through ancient trees whose roots twisted like serpents. Sunlight began to filter through the canopy, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced across their path. Suddenly, the sound of running water drew their attention. A river cut through the forest, its current strong and swift. Kael stopped at the edge, his sharp eyes scanning the opposite bank. "This is the first test," he said. "We must cross without being seen. The hunters are clever. They will expect us to move along open paths. The river is dangerous, but it may save us." Alara's heart quickened. The water looked cold and unforgiving. Yet, beneath her fear, a sense of excitement stirred. She had faced her stepmother. She had leapt from cliffs. She had survived the forest chase. She could face this too. Kale extended his hand. "Trust me," he said simply. Alara took it. The warmth of his hand, the steadiness of his grip, filled her with a courage she did not fully understand. Together, they stepped into the river, the cold water biting at their skin, pulling at their feet. The current pushed them, but Kale's magic guided their steps, shaping the water just enough to make their passage possible. Halfway across, a shout echoed from the forest behind them. The hunters had found their trail. Alara's heart pounded, but Kale's steady presence beside her was a tether. They pushed forward, reaching the opposite bank with splashes and bruises, but alive. The sanctuary was still miles ahead, hidden deep within the mountains. As they walked, Kale began to speak, his voice low and steady. "You have magic, Alara. More than you realize. It can protect you, guide you, even fight for you. But you must believe in it. And you must believe in yourself." Alara looked at him, the first real smile touching her lips. "I will try," she said softly. "I have to. I cannot be taken again. I will not be a pawn." Kale's eyes softened, and he nodded. "Good. That is all I ask. Fear will come, but do not let it control you." As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thinner, colder, and the forest fell away to jagged rocks and cliffs. The path was narrow, winding, and dangerous. At times, they had to hold onto the cliffs themselves, their hands gripping the stone as the wind threatened to throw them off balance. And then, at the peak of a narrow ridge, they saw it a ruined temple carved into the mountainside, hidden from the world below. Its stones glowed faintly with ancient magic. This was the sanctuary Kale had spoken of, a place where her power could grow safely, shielded from those who would exploit her. Alara's eyes widened. The temple was beautiful, though abandoned and crumbling. Symbols of protection and old magic adorned the walls. The air here felt alive, humming with power. She felt it stir within her, a pulse that matched her heartbeat. But as they approached, a dark shape emerged from the shadows, a figure she recognized instantly. Her stepmother. The cruel smile on her face made Alara's stomach twist. She had thought she had escaped, but here she was, waiting, commanding an army of hunters behind her. Kale stepped forward, his body tense, protective. "Stay behind me," he warned. But his eyes were fixed on the woman who had caused so much pain. Alara felt a rush of fear, anger, and determination all at once. She had survived everything so far, and she would not falter now. Her magic, faint but strong, pulsed beneath her skin. She could feel it responding to her emotions, fear, anger, and hope mingling to create a force she had never felt before. Her stepmother's voice cut through the wind. "Did you really think you could escape me, girl? Do you not know who you are dealing with?" Alara stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am not yours. I belong to no one." Her words were small, but they carried weight, strengthened by the magic that now hummed through her veins. Kale moved beside her, his presence steady and strong. Together, they faced the stepmother and the hunters. The wind seemed to respond to them, the air vibrating with power. Alara raised her hands slightly, and a wave of shimmering light spread before them. The hunters hesitated, stunned by the force. Kale's voice rang out, commanding and certain. "Leave now. She is under my protection. No harm will come to her while I stand here." The stepmother's eyes narrowed, but even she could sense the power that stood against her. Her lips curled in frustration, and she motioned for her hunters to retreat. Slowly, reluctantly, they stepped back, disappearing into the shadows. Ilara's knees weakened, and she sank to the ground, gasping. Kale knelt beside her immediately, steadying her. "You did well," he said. "Your power, it is strong. You are stronger than you know." Alara looked at him, a mixture of relief and awe on her face. I felt it," she whispered. "Something inside me. I didn't know it could be like this." Kale's gaze softened. "It is only the beginning. With time, you will learn to control it fully. You are no longer a prisoner. Alara, you are free to become who you were meant to be." She felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had never known before. Freedom, trust, connection, and perhaps a spark of something more, something that made her heart race even in the safety of the sanctuary. For a long moment, they sat together, the wind carrying the scent of pine and cold stone. The world below seemed far away, the dangers of the castle and the hunters momentarily gone. Alara closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of her magic, the steady presence of Kale, and the promise of a life she could shape herself. Kale finally spoke, his voice quiet, almost gentle. "You are not alone, Alara. Not anymore. And I will stand with you. Whatever comes." Her eyes met his, and she saw something in him she had not seen before: truth, strength, and perhaps a kind of understanding that went deeper than words. In that moment, fear and danger faded, replaced by a fragile, beautiful trust. But even as the sun climbed higher, and the sanctuary seemed safe, both knew this was only a beginning. The world outside was still cruel, her stepmother still scheming, and the magic within her still awakening. Their journey was far from over. Alara stood, her shoulders straight, eyes bright with determination. "I am ready," she said. "No one will control me again. Not ever." Kale nodded, his hand brushing hers briefly, a gesture of trust, of connection, and perhaps something more. And as they stepped into the light of the sanctuary, the ruins seemed to hum in approval. Magic, courage, and newfound strength mingled in the air. The forest, the mountains, the world beyond, they could wait. For now, Alara was free. She was alive. And she had found someone who would walk beside her, through shadow and flame alike. The wind whispered through the sanctuary, carrying the promise of future trials and adventures. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of hope ignited, a spark that would burn through darkness, fear, and doubt. Alara smiled faintly, her gaze on the rising sun. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. And Kale, standing silently beside her, gave a small nod, knowing that together, they could face whatever the world might throw at them.